All right, we're live. So welcome back to Dapp University. So the entire crypto industry has just been taking an absolute beating over the past week, past month or so. And it looks like the headwinds for crypto as a whole are getting stronger, specifically surrounding some events that happened yesterday that I want to talk about in this video. It feels like crypto just keeps getting screwed, especially by regulators, all right? I'm going to talk about that in this video, why you need to understand it. I'm talking about talk about it as a blockchain developer works this technology on a daily basis. So if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something that you're interested in, then smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to learn how to master blockchain step-by-step from start to finish, then head on over to dappuniversity.com/bootcamp to get started today. Last but not least, I think I'm sending this videos and I have financial advice, and there's lots of scammers down in the comment section below. Just ignore them. Like, I'll never give you my phone number or ask you to invest with me. So we got people jumping in the chat here. We got Culture Hives, Nathan, David, Lee, Egghead, Crypto Wrath. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, so let's jump into this. All right, so like I've been saying, crypto's had a tough week, a tough month, quarter, maybe whatever you want to call it, for the entire industry, facing a lot of different headwinds, particularly around laws being made in the U.S. and regulations. One of the biggest challenges for crypto, I've been talking about this in these live streams, is the regulatory uncertainty coming down the pike. We've talked about it being sort of like one of the final bosses for crypto for it to really reach mainstream adoption. That's one of the reasons there's a lot of risk in crypto right now, because we don't really have full regulatory clarity on this, okay? And over the past, couple weeks or months, we've seen a lot of unfavorable comments come out from lawmakers and regulators. We've got the U.S. infrastructure bill that wants to, put completely burdensome regulations upon crypto, make it impossible for people to comply inside the U.S. We've seen the battle with that. We've covered it on this channel. We've seen, the SEC's comments towards Coinbase over the past week about their lend program and how Coinbase has completely decided to scrap that feature with the battle with the SEC. And yesterday, we actually just heard comments from Gary Gensler, the SEC chair, that were very unfavorable about crypto and the future of it, especially as it pertains to the SEC. So let's talk about that, all right? Because this is something you definitely want to pay attention to, because it's super important for the overall future of the industry. So yesterday, SEC Chair Gary Gensler says he wants to clean up crypto before a spill. Okay, so yesterday he did an interview with the Washington Post talking about, let's see here, basically the regulatory framework for cryptos. So this is kind of troubling because, I saw some takes on this where basically, some people had an open mind about Gensler, thinking he could be good because he had a background in actually teaching and studying crypto with the help of some computer scientists at MIT. So he'd actually, had at least some basic understanding of it. And, but some of the comments that we saw yesterday do not seem like he has a very favorable sort of view of the industry and what its role is, especially as it pertains to the SEC's involvement. So basically, he's talking about his commitment to really, dig deep into crypto. And there's some really troubling stuff inside here. Okay. I'm actually going to pull up some of the key comments here. Okay. So one of the first statements I want to talk about here. So what he's saying is, talking about how he's dedicated time to study crypto, thinks it's interesting and innovative, but he says, at the same time, I don't think the technology is going to last long outside of a social and public policy framework. Okay. So the real troubling thing behind that statement is basically positioning, the SEC and regulators as necessary for crypto to evolve and flourish. First of all, I don't think that's really true in the first place. I don't think that regulations are really going to help crypto in the long run. I think they're an inevitable thing that's going to happen, and I'm realistic about that. But I think regulation is honestly going to slow down the innovation that happens in crypto. And so when you have sort of the opposite viewpoint that, this is necessary, we're positioning ourselves as, someone that's instrumental to your success, it's like, nah, I don't think so. he clarifies what he means by this. So he says, this means instituting investor and consumer protections, that this is paramount at this stage in the space. Okay, the SEC's, it basically includes, they have investor protection in securities markets, but, to cover crypto, the agency would need to take a broad stance on its mission. So talking about the commitment for investor protection, and this is where it doesn't really pass the smell test in a lot of ways. Where if you were totally concerned about investor protection, it sounds like investor protection kind of in name only as a policy stance here. Well, what happens when you get on the horn in an interview and you start talking about how dangerous crypto is, and then everybody who's invested in crypto's net worth just starts tanking because the prices are going down. We've seen how much trouble like other major names have gotten into whenever they've talked about Bitcoin publicly, about their stocks publicly, right? We see all the kinds of regulations around that, but it's okay for the SEC chair to get up there and talk about this, and the crypto tanks and all the investors are kind of rugged from that particular comment in the short term. Not to mention how people sell out of their crypto whenever the prices go down and don't hold it when it goes back up. So that's kind of some irony there. The other thing is basically think about all the Americans who lost out on like the DYDX airdrop of like $60,000 plus because they weren't allowed to use DYDX. It's like, well, for your protection, you weren't allowed to do this, but basically you missed out on a pretty big opportunity to earn some free funds. So that's the real thing that bothers me about this is the guise of investor protection, and my radar kind of goes up when people are saying that they're making policies for your protection in the first place. It sort of sets up this front where it's like, well, my position is now beyond reproach because I've framed it this way, and it's like, well, that's when you really probably need to ask the harder questions. Okay. So, think about it this way. Another view on this is it basically widens, an income inequality gap if you're basically saying all these people cannot participate for their protection in something that's causing one of the biggest generational shifts in wealth and one of the biggest wealth creation events in the past, millennia. And you're now saying these people that, can't participate, or we want to put all these handcuffs on things for consumer protection. It's like, yeah, that doesn't seem right. So I want to look at some other takes on this, actually, beyond just my own. Those are my initial sort of read on the situation. I actually want to pull up a tweet thread here. Let me just pull it up here. Pull the tweet thread. Before I do, I want to talk about one potential solution to this. Because the other concerns about this is basically if we see all this regulatory fat that gets heaped onto crypto inside the United States, inevitably what's going to happen is you're going to have people pushed outside the United States. It's going to create black markets. It's going to push stuff offshore. That's just kind of what tends to happen. And I realize a lot of people watching this video are not based in the United States. They say, why does it matter for me? Well, the U.S. oftentimes is pretty influential in how other Western countries in particular make policies. So it does matter for the rest of the world. Not to mention all the economic activity that happens in the U.S. is pretty significant. So that's a big factor too. But another big thing here is there's a push now to decentralize as fast as possible to basically try to kind of outskirt regulations in a lot of ways. So that looks like a lot of the decentralized finance apps, decentralizing as many things as possible to remove these single points of failure where it's hard to shut it down. Now, of course, you could prosecute people who created it in the first place. You could prevent your own citizens from interacting with these types of things. There's lots of things you could do here. But from an actual shutting down part, that's what we're pushing a lot of people to do. Now, another thing is really important, and why in the long term I'm super bullish on Ethereum and very decentralized layer one smart contract platforms is basically the ability to withstand regulatory pushback. Because if you have a smart contract platform that has a central point of failure, let's see that they find out that, surprise, surprise, it's only run by like a couple dozen nodes and all those nodes are owned by the same company. Well, guess what's going to happen? That chain could potentially shut down and you could lose all your money if they are forced to comply with regulations, okay? I know that's an extreme case for sure, but you can kind of just look at each extreme and then find a spectrum of risk along that trajectory, and it's going to be really hard for something like that to happen to Ethereum because of the amount of decentralization of the nodes. So, anyways, I want to look at another tweet thread here. This is from Raoul Paul talking about this. I thought it was a pretty good take. So let's look at it. So I listened to Gensler, and it's clear he is laying down the hardest case he can for regulation of digital assets. But my view is that he will likely get his way, that most are going to be classified as securities, but with the wholesale change to what that means. So it's like the internet started to gain, it's like then the internet started to gain real traction. The authorities tried to impose harsh rules, but in the end, there had to be a grand compromise to not stifle something very important and deep. So that decision led to trillions of dollars of new capital creation and the largest investment inflows into the U.S. in history. So the innovation that was seeding from light touch regulation of the internet changed the world with the U.S. as a leader. So digital assets are as big a deal. This technology has created an entirely new financial system. Okay. So basically, he's saying the digital assets will be securities, but the regulation around that will end up being much lighter than today. So that's the whole point he's trying to make, is that basically he thinks that Gensler is going to get his way, that pretty much everything is going to be classified as a security, but the regulatory framework around securities as they pertain to crypto assets is probably going to be lighter than the regulatory framework around securities as we think about them today. And that this is classic, sort of negotiation tactics where you're coming, really strong, and then you back off and you find some sort of compromise in the middle. And this is really similar to some of the things that happened in the early, internet. So that's me just kind of summarizing the rest of that tweet thread. I'm not going to read it all word for word here on screen. I'll put a link to it in the chat right now. So boom, there you go. It's in the live chat. But that's definitely something to watch out for. So, and like I said, the regulations are important. Some people say this is just FUD, but I don't think so. This is something that has to be really closely watched. And, if you're, I know a lot of people out there don't really like politics, myself included. But this is a situation where, if you have an issue that you care about, and you're able to, actually participate in a way that matters, I mean, this is something that you can definitely, watch out for. So let's look at, let's going on with crypto markets, because like I said, this has not been good for crypto prices, at least in the short term. What happens with crypto prices is always complicated. We've seen a lot of factors. Anytime you see a market correction, it's usually not just like one thing that does it, unless it's like super obvious. We've seen a pretty big, kind of mixture of things that I think have really impacted the markets this past week. We've been talking about them on this channel. We talked about the Evergrande situation. We've been, really affecting global markets. I think a lot of that's really just fear, rather than actually fundamentals changing. Talk about that here in a minute. We're seeing, still lots of just fears about Fed tapering, fears about, Delta variant going around. And then with crypto in particular, we're seeing, a lot of fear come out, especially around this regulatory uncertainty. And I think a lot of this dip that we saw yesterday had significant influence from the SEC interview. So I actually want to look at some takes on the crypto markets. Of course, we're still down here. ETH dipped in the $2,800 range. Bitcoin down into the $40,000 range. Pretty much everything is getting pretty wrecked. Okay, so my stance on this is I'm still cautiously bullish, on the overall crypto markets. I've been talking about that, but I still think that it's true, and here's why. Basically, I don't see anything fundamentally changing in terms of adoption. I think a lot of the stuff that's happened lately has been kind of noise along the way, particularly with the Evergrande scenario. And I put this on my Twitter yesterday. I've been saying these live streams, but I'll reiterate it. I'm not an expert in Asian real estate markets or in, macroeconomics by any stretch of the imagination. I might get the basics, but if I were, thinking about this in terms of pure probability, I would see the Evergrande situation as being basically, out of sheer probability, not being a global catastrophe, because the amount of times that you could correctly predict a global catastrophe would be, you count them on one hand, maybe in the past 100 years or so. So I've seen that, opinion resonate with others online. So I actually retweeted that and put it on my Twitter yesterday, and I'm sticking to that. But we can actually look at some other takes on the overall markets beyond just what I personally think about this. I'll play this on my screen. So I saw this quick take come up on CNBC from Mike Novogratz, the CEO of Galaxy Digital, about kind of what's going on in the crypto markets. I'll see if I can replay this. Let's see if I can get the audio to properly come through on my computer here. Let me just pull it back.
Where this is all headed, whether this is a buying opportunity, if you will, to buy the dip, or there's something grander, that's a play on words, about what's really happening here, Mike.
Listen, the crypto market's had an amazing run. So let's first I'll put that in perspective. It's had an amazing quarter. There was a tremendous amount of activity around what we'll call level one blockchains, things like Ethereum, where people realized the story is not just Bitcoin, but it really is Web3. And missing Web3 would be like missing the internet. And so we've seen lots of money pile in. And I think the market got itself a little too long. The China news scared people. Worry about Fed coming out and talking about stable coins and regulation. Gary Gensler has been like the tough sheriff. There was rumors yesterday all over the big conference in New York that the SEC was showing up and subpoenaing people.
Yep.
And so I think there was a lot of nervousness in the market, and you washed a lot of shorter term risk out. We held 40,000 overnight in Bitcoin and 2,800 in Ethereum. I think those are very important levels for people to watch. As long as those hold, I think the market's in good shape. I see nothing but engagement and activity from our investing clients and our corporate clients. The level of inquiry, the level of business hasn't been higher. You notice today, SoftBank came out and led a round for an NFT project in Europe called So Rare, and a $660 million capital raise. And so we see so much capital coming into the space in private ways and in public ways. I'm not nervous. I actually think it's a buy. But listen, the prices are prices. It was an ugly day in crypto yesterday.
All right, so there you have it. So I believe his statement at the end was he thinks it's a buy the dip situation. So I think that's of course not necessarily my opinion. I'm not telling you not financial advice. I'm not telling you what to do, but that is his opinion. So yeah, let's kind of dig into that. So he's saying a lot of what I've been echoing on this channel, which is fundamentally in terms of adoption, in terms of capital flowing into the space, in terms of infrastructure getting built, in terms of apps getting built, new users, all that type of stuff. Nothing has fundamentally changed. And my long-term thesis on this channel is that all that activity accrues to the value of the cryptocurrencies themselves through the network effects. Okay. And, that's what he's saying. And, he's got a much stronger insider pulse onto especially private capital that comes into this space. And, yeah, I think what he's saying is we're seeing no shortage of money flow into crypto from a, building and private equity, perspective. So another pretty good take that I saw come up that I want to pull up on my screen here. So this is from Spartan Black on Twitter. It's a pretty good follow. If you haven't followed him, definitely check this out. I'll put a link to the tweet thread in the live chat here. I won't go through the entire thing, but he's saying that my take on the recent correction, I think another buying opportunity. So why I think the market concerns are overblown and are mostly transient factors. So one, the recent correction can be attributed to four factors in his opinion. Concerns about Fed tapering, like I was saying, SEC warnings about crypto DeFi, like we're talking about, Evergrande, debt default potential, contagion effects, that being like a systemic global risk, options expiration on September 24th, and the NFT market deflating in recent weeks. So Fed tapering concerns have emerged time and time again over the years. Given the weaker inflation print in August and events around Evergrande, I don't think the Fed will be able to take a hawkish stance. Okay. Yeah, but basically probably much ado about nothing. So on the SEC, they have certainly been more aggressive as of late about regulating crypto and DeFi. This has been an overhand on DeFi tokens and Uniswap specifically, so one can say this concern has been priced in partially. So while any near-term SEC enforcement actions or announcements can create further uncertainty, it believes regulations are good for DeFi long-term, as it will remove this uncertainty and allows institutional capital to participate more freely. That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's an interesting take. It's hard to get on board with the usage of good. I'm more in the camp of, regulations are inevitable. We have to accept them. But I do see what he's saying is good here because of the benefit that it gets, people entering in the space with more confidence. So I could maybe get behind that with some nuance and some clarification. So on Evergrande, if you look at the Chinese debt defaults over the past few decades, the government has always stepped in to intervene and force an orderly restructuring. The central government will not allow this to play out in public domain without having a plan in place. I think that's pretty spot on. So he's talking more about Evergrande situation. Options expiry always leads to volatility. We talked about some on this channel. NFT market in a speculative bubble, not unlike the ICO bubble in 2017. We've definitely talked about NFT bubble being pretty frothy and how I think it could pop soon. So I think that's playing out before our eyes. So anyways, that's a summary of what he thinks kind of been going on with the markets, why we've seen some recent price volatility and why he thinks it's a dip buying opportunity. Of course, his opinion, not my financial advice to you. So, in terms of these, the regulations, I saw a pretty interesting article come up here in Time. It was tweeted out by Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase. Talking about the U.S. losing the global race to decide the future of money, and it could doom the almighty dollar. Okay. So again, I realize a lot of people watching this, video are not in the U.S. I totally get that. A lot of people who are watching this video are inside the U.S. And I think this affecting the U.S. is not really just an isolated U.S. problem, but really a world problem. And so that's why I bring it up and why I think it's important to at least ponder, okay, about the actions that we take inside the U.S. in terms of regulations can really affect the entire world. Number one, how it affects the U.S. dollar in the first place, but number two, how it sets the tone, and also like just the U.S.'s impact in terms of global economy, but also number two, how that sets the tone for other Western countries in particular who tend to mirror what other Western countries do. It's not just people following the U.S., it's the U.S. following others as well. It's kind of a two-way street, influence one another. And so that's why I think it's really, really important to be vigilant about all this. And it's not just for crypto. And that's the thing, it's not completely about, thinking about the success of crypto as much as it is about thinking about the success of all these nations. Because in my opinion, crypto is an inevitability that's going to, it's a force that's moving. And the whole opinion here is that, like, basically trying to push it offshore is going to cut off all the ability to capture all that activity that's going to happen regardless of what you do and reap some of those benefits for your own sake. This doesn't change Canada adoption. It could. It definitely could change Canadian adoption. Okay, so some other positive news, though, in terms of applications actually shipping and innovating. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Because we saw news yesterday that PayPal releases new consumer app for crypto savings and direct deposits. So this is actually pretty interesting because PayPal has been an early player that's really helped adoption of crypto. We talked about this last year. PayPal's kind of gone through these multiple iterations of bringing crypto into their ecosystem. The first thing I believe was just the ability to buy and sell basic crypto assets inside your PayPal accounts, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, any of the real majors, and Litecoin. So that was kind of the initial step. Then they moved towards actually allowing to pay merchants in their PayPal network with these cryptocurrencies. And then we kind of see just more and more added on. Crypto being very PayPal being very pro crypto, and now we're seeing PayPal to release new consumer app for crypto savings and direct deposits. Okay, so direct deposits, that's pretty significant. So PayPal's announced the release for a new app billed to be a one-stop shop for all the digital payment needs of the company's customers. So covers both crypto and non-crypto use cases, a wallet tab to manage cryptocurrency, and high yield savings. So this is what's really interesting because, the Coinbase Lend program, we saw some pretty significant pushback from the SEC on that particular thing. So my question is how we're able to get around, some of the higher yield interest rates here. But although it looks like it's just going to be 0.4%. which is not much better than a bank account. So we'll see if the interest rates become higher, if there's some interesting ability to get around with the some of the pushback that Coinbase saw with the SEC. So we'll definitely keep an eye on this. But if they're able to pull this off and we can actually have a high yield savings product with favorable regulatory oversight, then that's awesome. So see if we got questions in the chat here. Somebody says Web3 is the future in the next 5 years, positive returns for sure. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, people talking about how you can get, higher percentage returns on proof of stake coins, all that type of stuff. Yeah, it makes total sense. But the whole point here is that people can just deposit dollars into their account without having to get deep into crypto, and then they can just get this benefit. So something about Bitcoin ETF. So yeah, I am seeing more and more rumors of a Bitcoin ETF actually being approved pretty soon on the grand scheme of things. Yeah, just rumors. We don't know for sure, but if it does get approved soon, that could be pretty bullish for Bitcoin, particularly this cycle. That could be a pretty big catalyst for more people coming in the space. Somebody says if September is usually a bad month for crypto, what about October, November? Yeah, we don't know. I mean, we don't have necessarily a good reason why September is a bad month for crypto, other than that it just historically has been in the past. I don't know that it's honestly statistically significant because you can't necessarily think of a cause for why that's the case. If somebody has a compelling argument for why that's the case, let me know down in the comment section below, other than just superstition, astrology, coincidence, Is the NFT coding tutorial still applicable? Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. What's the likelihood of January 2022 ETH 2.0? I guess you're talking about the merge. I'm trying to quantify the likelihood. I don't think it's super likely to be here in January. I think sometime in Q1 though is the sort of unspoken desire. So by the time they make decentralization a priority with all the stuff that's happening right now, yeah, 100% agree. But Q3 ending being a reason, yeah, I could see that as being a factor, like quarters ending being a factor. Yeah. I don't think it's enough of a reason for it to be a negative month. Quarterly taxes. But then you'd have to see that probably at the end of every quarter, right? All right, everybody, that's all I got for today. As always, smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. That really helps these videos out so that more people can learn about blockchain. You know, if you're as fascinated with this technology as I am, you want to get your hands dirty, how can you get started today? Well, you can go to my YouTube homepage. You can find any of my free courses there. They're like Udemy courses, but they're totally free. And if you like those and you want to take the next step, or hey, maybe you want to take a master's shortcut entirely, I actually become a blockchain master step-by-step start to finish over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. You don't have to be an expert to get started today. I've helped people with zero coding experience become real-world blockchain developers in a matter of months. So that's all I've got. And until next time, thanks for watching Dapp